Hey guys, welcome to our I guess we'll call it our first live webinar on settling in Canada. And I thought I'd give you a little bit of background as I welcome people who are joining in from all over. We've got Callum here is Dundee, Scotland, and Karthik, welcome. Chennai, India. We'll see if we can move that up here a little better visibility here. I think I may just add a little background onto here to make it appear a little better. There we go. And we'll drop them down here. Yeah, it's great. We've had clients for years and years that come, and some have success settling and others struggle a little bit more. And so we thought, you know what, let's just bring everybody together. Obviously us at Holthe Immigration Law, we're not expecting to get anything out of this really. It's more just a way that we can give back and we can try to help people in their journey, because there is some phenomenal resources out there, and it's just a matter of knowing where to find them. So that's kind of the goal behind what we're doing here. I've got some videos I'm going to share. I've got a special guest I'm going to come and have join us, and you guys are going to be able to ask all of the questions that you have about settling in Canada. That's a part of this webinar. I've got a little bit of a presentation that is going to guide the process, but ultimately this is all just about you, and so it's exciting. As we're going through here, I also want you to comment. So we'll go through and we'll give a few other shout outs. We've got Francesca is in Malta. We've got Kumar is in the States, which is great. And I am just looking here a little bit at the screen. I'm just going to adjust it a bit. There we go. Obviously, we're working on our production value here and the quality of our production. We've got some aspects that are a little bit better than others. There we go. A little bit of fine tuning. Okay, we've got Vidi is in Halifax. Welcome, Vidi. All right, we've got Mady from Lyon in France. Excellent. Let's see what Masood here says. Hello, Mark. I've been following you since the start of your online journey, and you've come a long way. Congratulations and good luck. That's right. To a large extent, what I've been doing here in my journey is evolving with how I've been, just improving the way and the delivery of the free services that I offer on the internet. To a large extent, it's kind of like the evolution and the journey that you guys all go through as you're trying to find a way to realize your dream of immigrating to Canada. Okay, and Sherelle says, has the webinar started? You bet. Narelle is Abu Dhabi. That's great. We've got Jess from Nigeria. Thanks for tuning in, Jess. We've got Sunny is in the Maldives. Nathan is Tampa, and it's just continuing on and on. Ibrahim is over in England. All right, so thanks so much for commenting, and we'll wrap it up there with Agam from India. So like I said, we're going to go through a bunch of different things today, and hopefully these will be of use to you guys. But the most important thing is, whenever we're going through any kind of a journey like this, we're never on our own, and we constantly have to rely on assistance and help from those around us. Some sources are better than others, obviously, and my goal today is just to provide you with access to some of those amazing resources that are out there. But before we start, I think it's important to understand that it's not as easy as you think it is. And maybe people don't think it is, but a lot of people, they think they've got it all figured out. But I just want to share a little intro video here from a good friend that kind of sets the stage for our webinar today. So let me just flip over to my good friend here.
Hi, I'm Bella, and I'm a permanent resident for 5 years now. When I heard that Mark is doing this course, I thought, wow, this is amazing. I wished I would have had this course. It would have made my journey way easier. For example, where do you go when you first arrive? Getting informed about all the upfront payments I didn't know about, like a deposit to get power in your apartment or house. The struggles about getting car insurance when coming from another country. Who to bank with? How do you even get a car with no credit history in Canada? There are so many things to get informed about before coming to Canada. And I am so grateful that Mark has put this course together for everyone to be informed as much as possible.
Awesome. Bella is like my sister. She is, she just really tells it like it is. And like she identified, there was a lot of steps in the process that you don't realize until you actually get here. And in some cases, it's almost too late. And so being kind of advised about some of the key areas to be aware of and things to even just start to think about, because obviously how to settle in Canada is a journey that really comes down to each individual. Things may be different in the countries that you're leaving with respect to how you bring your money out of that country. There may be differences in, your ability to get some of the documents or some of the material that we advise you to get. You may have challenges getting those things. It might be easier for others. So everybody has their own individual journey. And by all means, I'm not trying in this little free settlement webinar to give you an overview that would work for every single person out there. So to a large extent, what we're talking about here is a little bit Alberta centric. If you're coming to Alberta in particular, but obviously there are a lot of what we're doing here that applies across the country, no matter where you're actually headed to here in Canada or where you're coming from. All right, so what I'd like to do is I'm going to shift gears here and open up our Canadian Settlement webinar presentation. And as you can see here, as we work through the slides, getting your COPR, and those of you uninitiated out there, if you haven't already figured out what that is, that's the confirmation of permanent residence. And the interesting part is that in Canada right now, these confirmations of permanent residence are actually, not, in some cases, not even being issued. The way the COVID-19 and the travel restrictions, sometimes clients are just getting an email saying, voila, you are a permanent resident. Congratulations. And then, of course, they have to sort out a bunch of things after the fact. But it'll be interesting to see how the dust settles once everything has been completed. But for this, when I say completed, I mean this whole coronavirus thing gets sorted out if we return back to some semblance of normal. But the confirmation of permanent residence for everyone, generally speaking, is one of the mandatory components and one of the last steps that you're going to have in your interaction with Immigration, Refugees, and Citizenship Canada before you actually travel to land. So with that being said, let's jump into kind of some of the overall topics that we're going to cover. And I think some of you are aware of the fact that as we are, as like I said, as we're going through this journey, we're really going to be in a situation where everybody has to tailor the advice that we're giving to your own situation. So some of this will work great for you. Some of this will make sense. Other stuff you might say, well, I can't really do that. And so then you're just going to have to adapt. So remember, the key here for us is to give you as much direction and advice to know where to look for help and the resources that you need. Okay, so here's kind of an overall breakdown of how we're going to discuss these things. So we're going to talk about before you actually even board the plane, what you need to do immediately after landing, identify probably the most important part of this whole process, which is the government-based programs that are out there to help you. And so many people just don't take advantage of them. And they're awesome. They're unbelievable. We're going to talk about finding accommodation, which is also a tricky thing. And then we're going to wrap up with some job search instruments. So some tools that can help you to navigate your way through the process of actually finding a job in Canada. All right. And as we go through this process, and I'm doing this webinar, we're going to have a stage where you guys can start posting your comments and your questions. But I'm not going to field all those questions myself. I'm going to pull in one of our more recent experts, having gone through the journey himself, to join me, and I'm going to keep that a little surprise. All right, so before you depart, so these are some of the things you absolutely need to consider doing, unless you have some other alternative in place, before you even step on that plane. So as we're going through here, the first thing is use the pre-arrival newcomers services. And I'm going to get into, more detail on that a little bit later. But the key here, and I guess I could actually just shift over and I'll just share my, I'm going to share my computer here screen. So in here you can see are just some of the examples that I'm going to be showing you a little bit later, that these pre-arrival resources are actually provided to you in initial correspondence that you receive when you get your confirmation of permanent residence. And do not overlook this. Do not assume that it's just general information. And most definitely do not assume that just because it's free that it's not worthwhile, because that is definitely not the case. Now I'm just going to, make sure that make sure that you don't assume that. You can see here, this is one of the main government websites, and this site here is obviously put together by the Government of Canada, Immigration, Refugees, and Citizenship Canada, as a resource where you can go to any of the questions that we're talking about today. So I'm not here to reinvent the wheel. I'm not here to say that we at Holthe Immigration Law and my team are somehow experts in this area. We're not. In fact, the government pays organizations who are experts to administer a lot of these programs to newcomers. And so these are some of the main ones that the Government of Canada points to when they are, basically when they're trying to get you as set up as possible to actually come and land in Canada. Okay, so take a look at those and make sure that you do not ignore those. Okay, so on our agenda here, the next on the list before you get on the plane is to book an Airbnb. Now, to a large extent, we provide that advice because the cost of trying to find somewhere to actually stay can be exorbitant if you're relying upon a hotel until you find a different place. And when you're booking an Airbnb, it's really important to try to search out different areas in the city where you're about to land. And how do you do that? Well, there are tons of online forums. You can use social media. You can even explore through the city through Google Street View and just say, hey, what is that area? What does that look like? And, to a large extent, the variations across even the same city can be stark. So you need to pay attention to that. So really use the online resources, and even people that that have gone before you that might live in those cities are a great resource. But booking an Airbnb is a pretty simple process overall. But one of the things that we advise is not to book more than 2 weeks, because at the end of the day, you want to be able to get yourself a place to stay. And obviously when it comes to the 2 weeks as well, you want to do this in advance, even with the self-isolation rules. We don't know right now with COVID-19 how things are going to play out. And when they start to lift the restrictions, regardless, you're going to want to have at least 2 weeks in place. Whether the coronavirus is in place here in the coming months, or the restrictions and things that are being imposed on everybody, if those are still going to be in place, and how long they're going to be in place for. All right, you can always extend your stay. Like 2 weeks is probably good. You can always extend your stay if you need to. And remember that you may not like this first B&B that you stayed at, so you don't want to lock yourself in for a long period of time. So that's so from the standpoint of the Airbnb. And what does B&B stand for? It's kind of like bed and breakfast is kind of what it used to. I don't know if all of them these days actually provide breakfast with it, but the bed is definitely there. All right. So now this may or may not apply, right? Some of you may have valid reasons for maintaining your bank account, but we do advise that if you are looking at moving, that sometimes it's not as easy to close things up and wrap things up once you're out of that country. Now, sometimes we talk about these soft landings where you come, land, and then go back. But you need to contemplate the steps and procedures that you need to close your bank account if you're not returning back to that country. All right, then get your medical records. Now, people don't even think about this. And I know in the resources that are out there, this may or may not be in one of the government tips for what you'd need to do. But hey, if something happens to you there's nothing more valuable than to provide your actual medical history. What immunizations have you had? Have you had prior conditions? Um, even consider dental services in your country. Canada is obviously likely to be a little bit more expensive, but having a history of your dental records can really help as well. All right. Then translate official documents. Now, to a large extent, a lot of those documents are going to be translated when you immigrate. But in the context of even, let's say, birth certificates, for instance, in the process of express entry, you may not even need to include a birth certificate in the process. And so you may need those birth certificates for other things when you travel to Canada. So I use that just as one example. But if there are other important documents like marriage certificates, even professional training certificates that weren't a part of your educational credential assessments, your driving records. Do you have a driving abstract? Sometimes employers, although these records vary from country to country, the reality is sometimes these are things that you may need. And what about just other achievements, other awards, other things that can help in your job hunt or that might be useful for other things. So keep that in mind. Of course, this is one thing. Reference letters, yes, in the context of your application, for express entry, you're obviously going to be providing the reference letters that you need for the purposes of getting those points. But hey, you may have other low skill work. You may have other work experience that isn't a part of your express entry, at least from the standpoint of needing a reference letter that would help you to get a job in another area that you hadn't even contemplated. And so having those other up-to-date reference letters could be useful. But don't forget and don't overlook the importance of a reference from a past landlord if you were renting previously. In many cases, when you're renting your first place in Canada, you may need it for the actual lease application. And so obviously it goes without saying for work references, but don't forget to do that. Now, obviously, if you've owned your own home and you're selling it, that's another situation. But if you can get that and if this applies to you, then make sure you do it. Okay. This might be just something everybody just intuitively would do anyways, but join local social media channels. Go out of your way to connect with other people that have gone before you, that just like our group. So we have a group that you all probably should have joined, which is one of the ones that we're really wanting to promote is our Settling in Canada hub is what we're going to actually call it. For this, at this point, it was course, and we thought really a lot about how we can best help and serve people. And as I've looked at this, I've evaluated, as I've looked at all the government resources, guys, are awesome. They are so good. And as we dive into it a little bit more, I'll kind of show you what I'm talking about. But they are organizations that are paid by the government to help you in your transition to Canada. And in many respects, you need to connect with them and you need to make sure that you are using those services before you actually travel. So, although it's not specifically listed right here, well, use pre-arrival newcomer services. I guess I shouldn't say we haven't talked about it, but I want to emphasize you need to make sure you register and get locked in with as many of those organizations as you can before you step on the plane. And then the final one is to start looking for a job. Don't wait until you get to Canada to turn your mind to where am I going to work, because you need to make sure even in determining where you're going to live in Canada, you need to take a look and see if you have the flexibility. I'm not talking about you PNPs. You guys need to go to the provinces that nominated you. But for the rest of you, you're not locked into the location that you indicate where you intend to live. Outside of Quebec, that is, and outside of the restrictions for PNPs. If you're a general express entry candidate, you're free to live wherever you want. And if you originally said that you wanted to go to Toronto, but you discovered that Lethbridge, Alberta, Canada is definitely the place to go, which absolutely, it's the center of Canada, the most important city. Okay, maybe I'm joking a little bit. just because it's my hometown. But if you decide to switch it up because you find that there are better job opportunities, you're totally free to do that. You're not locked in. So start doing your checks now. Get your resume organized, make sure it's in order. And those pre-arrival newcomer services are going to offer a ton of assistance in formulating your resume in a way that Canadian employers like to receive it. Also, check LinkedIn, right? Check the various requirements that you need for the jobs that you want to fill, and make sure that you have proof that you have those qualifications in the form that we've talked about before, and making sure that those other documents, if they need to be translated, are translated. The key to remember here is that it is not any easier to find a job when you're inside Canada as it is outside. And I know that sounds kind of crazy, but it's the truth. You have to work just as hard when you're in Canada as you did outside of Canada, trying to find those jobs that are going to match the direction that you want to go for yourself. All right, so that is before you depart. All right, now let's shift to after you land. So you've had this beautiful flight, you've had butterflies in your stomach, you're excited. You don't know what those crazy border officers are going to ask you, but because you've listened to Mark Holthe's podcast that you've got your proof of your funds, which probably only 5% of the time they're actually going to ask you in the form of your simple updated bank statements is great. But you're getting here, you land in Canada. Okay, so one of the things here, it says keep the monetary instruments report declaration. So this document is what's actually given at the airport during the landing. And if the officer, for whatever reason, doesn't give you one, now remember, if you're carrying large sums of cash, that's where this comes in. And if you're landing in Canada, sometimes people make that decision that it's easier to pull it out in cash than to try to work through currency exchanges or wire transfers remotely, all those kinds of things. And half of the time, your bank account obviously isn't even set up. So it's not like you can preempt the wire transfer. You have to have a place to receive it in Canada. So lots of times people decide to bring their money in cash or some other form of cash-like instrument. And so you're going to be declaring that any large sums you're going to be declaring, and just read the border card that you're given in the air. Well, in some case, there's even an app now that you can use, but sometimes the airlines will give you the card that you can fill out where you declare the funds. Make sure that you declare them. That's important. They're not going to seize them. They just want to know. And then you'll receive this, and that just describes the funds that you're bringing to Canada. And it's actually crucial. It's an important piece that not a lot of people talk about when you're depositing large sums of money into this new bank account that you've set up. Okay. All right. What's next? So once you kind of get settled in your bed and breakfast, your Airbnb, then you're going to go to Service Canada for your social insurance number. Now, there is ways of applying online and things like that. But and understand this is all, this advice is kind of after the dust settles with all these restrictions and self-isolation rules and social distancing that are in place right now with COVID-19. So go to Service Canada for your social insurance number. Once you get that, and these are just our kind of order of priority based on how things kind of unfold and how they tumble forward. So, you need to get the bank set up, yes, but first you need to get your social insurance number. Then we encourage you to set up a phone, because you'll probably need the phone number for the purposes of the bank account. And we don't get into a lot of detail about the phone carrier, whether you're using one of the national ones, and when you look at phone carriers, the three major ones are TELUS, Rogers, and Bell, but they're also pretty darn expensive. And so when you're in some cities, and initially when you land, it's not like you're going to be traveling all over the countryside, and so you don't necessarily need a carrier that services a lot of these rural locations. Not like myself, who loves to go to Waterton National Park in Alberta, and sometimes the reception with some of these smaller carriers just doesn't reach out that far, and so it just isn't feasible for me. So I use Bell. But you should really consider some of the minor phone carriers like Fido, Lucky, Chatter, Freedom Mobile. So all of these ones, and you can choose prepaid service. So that kind of gets you your feet underneath you at the lowest cost hit, and then you can sort out what you really want to do. All right. Then once you've got the phone, then shift over and open your bank account. And you know, I it's I think if I was to do a poll of most immigrants, you know, to a large extent, probably Scotiabank has some of the best programs and plans for individuals that are just newly settled in Canada, newcomers really. They've got some pretty good programs, and I bank with Scotia, but at the end of the day, you have to choose one that fits whatever your needs are. And I think if you talk to most newcomers, a lot of them do. I should probably tell Scotia that they should they should give me a kickback for this promotion, but whatever. Anyways, there's high competition is the key that you have to understand. High competition for individuals just between the various banks, and so just shop around and find the one that works the best for you. Make comparisons regarding the fees that they charge for the accounts, regarding incentives that they might offer, limits, you know, with respect to credit or whatever it is that the bank is offering, whatever instrument. Make sure that you shop around and make sure you're choosing the one that's right for you. It's always good when you're dealing with banks to kind of play them off of each other. So, you know, sometimes we'll we'll say, hey, well, RBC has also got a program and they're offering this. That's the fun part of Canada. You do have the ability sometimes, especially with banks, to negotiate. And, you know, in many respects, they may, you know, they may also not have a lot of room for, you know, for negotiating. And they may say, this is the way it is. But I can tell you, when a bank, you know, when a bank officer says, this is the way it is, and you say, okay, well, this is the way it is with Royal Bank of Canada, or this is the way it is with CIBC. It's amazing how this is the way it is can actually be modified or changed, including a lower interest rate if you are, you know, if you're taking out any kind of a loan or things like that. Okay, so mention that the competitors are offering better service than they are, and you'd be surprised. Apply for, this is something, I hate credit. I hate it. But the reality is, when you're starting in Canada, you do need to start to develop somewhat of a presence in terms of the credit rating bureau. And you may have a stellar credit rating in your other country, but it's not always going to be recognized. So apply for a credit card as soon as possible, provided you have a long-term address. So the Airbnb, you probably need to find another place and settle in a, you know, in your actual home before you take that step for the credit card. But it is important, and you don't, doesn't mean just because you own a credit card, you don't want to just load it up with all of you know, max out that credit card. That's not helping. Use it and pay it off right away. That's just a standard, basic, recognized strategy that any sound financial advisor would tell you. So don't drum up a whole bunch of debt. You know, and I you know, I think of all of my clients from the UAE. You know, it's pretty easy to get these loans, and then before you realize it, when you're working a survival job, you've used this, you know, this credit card to help compensate for, you know, the lack of funds that you might have, and then before you know it, you've got this massive debt, and then you're leaving, and then now you can't get a police certificate for Canada because you have this massive debt that's over your head. So be wise with that. But it does help to navigate, because lots of things will often ask for a credit card. Okay. All right. Then what you want to do, and this kind of transitions in from the Airbnb that we're talking about, you want to start scheduling appointments as soon as possible. Okay. And we'll get to a few more details later in our fourth slide here. But you want to start doing that as soon as possible, because it takes time to find a place to live. So, like I said, when you have that permanent address, apply for that credit card, and you can actually start earning cash back and building your credit score. And then apply for your provincial ID. Each province, you know, in some cases it may be a driver's license, but you can also get just provincial identification cards as well, and apply for health insurance. Some provinces have restrictions. Sometimes you have to wait up to 90 days in some provinces, and other times you can get your coverage immediately. And so you just need to pay attention to the rules of the province where you're going. Um, yeah, and obviously health coverage can be critically important if, say, your spouse is expecting, right? And so, or you yourself are, and like I said, one of the advantages to our fine province here in Alberta is that Alberta covers you right off from day one. Now, in the current world of coronavirus that we're in right now, some of the provinces have waived that initial 90-day, but Canada isn't letting you guys in right now. So the travel restrictions are preventing you from coming anyways. So, yes, so keep that in mind. All right, let's shift now here to programs. The government programs, you guys, are absolutely critical. And so, in the second page of your passport request letter, you will have, and I said confirmation of permanent residence. Really, this comes earlier than your COPR. It actually comes when you get your passport request. There will be a little statement there that says there are free online and in-person services offered by designated settlement service providers that you and your family may be able to access to help prepare you for life in Canada. Visit our website to learn more, and there's the link. And you guys can go and click on that right now. And so if we shift over here, so this is before dash services, and I'm going to shift here to back to the websites, okay? And so this is one of those locations, and I'm gonna go right here. So this is what we're looking at. And you can see it talks about all about pre-arrival services, and I'm not gonna get into a lot of detail about this, but I do want to show you. So who can get services, prepare to live in Canada, prepare to work in Canada. All of these resources are all available to help you. So who can get services in Canada? So you can get free in-person and online services if they've approved your permanent resident application. You're currently outside Canada. So remember, don't wait until after you're in Canada to then try to take advantage of these pre-arrival services. All right. It looks like we're getting a little bit of a report. At least one of the comments says, I think we're having something wrong with the network. I know Igor's been kind of tuning in. Maybe Igor, you can just take a look and see if we're having any issues with the feed. Sometimes when you're doing these webinars and trying to do these private things, sometimes the connection has some issues. So I did notice that there haven't been a lot of comments lately. I wonder if we had a little bit of a break, Igor. So I'll have you look into that. But it says that the feed is still going and we're still live, so we'll continue to assume that that you guys can hear me. And fortunately, if for whatever reason this doesn't work out, oh, Agam says no, it's fine. Okay, good. I'm relying on you guys. This is live, right? So if there is anything wrong, hey, let me know. Anyway, so you can see here, like I said, these are pre-arrival services, and they say pre for a reason because it's all designed before you come, okay? So make sure that you take advantage of these. And you can see here, newcomer services, services for you. So you can find services wherever you're going. You can choose. So if we click on newcomer services near you, you can actually go through this process that guides you. And you can see that there's obviously the COVID-19 restrictions that we're talking about here. And you can see, I want to emphasize this, friendly and experienced settlement professionals can help you do all of the following things. So I hope you guys didn't think Mark here is going to give you all the magical tips and strategies for this. No, I'm actually not the expert. But what Mark is going to do for you is to keep pushing you back to all of these resources that are available so that you don't miss out. So you can enter in your postal code, the city, province, or full address to find a service near you. And so if I go in here and I'm going to put in Calgary, I'll just type this in and see if this will work for us here. We'll just hit enter, see what options come up here. Oh, postal code. That's my problem. Let's see if that one works. Let's see if this gives us anything here. And obviously when we're going through this process, actually I want help finding a job, help with daily life, click on a bunch of things, other services, language training. Let's see here. Okay, there we go. so you punch it in, and then it gives you access to the services that are in your area. So obviously the postal code I punched in was Lethbridge, and then it pulled up a bunch of these other organizations, contact information, okay, that are all available to help. And the list goes on and on and on here. So this is a good way to start. Okay, and like I said, as we go through this is kind of the search part that I was looking at. Okay, so I just wanted to give you a quick overview and just show you that. And I really want you to look, and you have to dive in deeper. So you have to dive in as far as you can. So free newcomer services funded by the government, which we've kind of showed there. And I want to emphasize, some people, once again, may think that these services are not as valuable because you're not paying for it. Understand that the government funds these organizations. They pay them a lot of money to deliver these services because they know the sooner and you can get on your feet, the sooner you can find your job, the sooner you can integrate, the sooner you're going to become a more productive citizen, well, a more productive permanent resident of Canada. You know, the more likely you're going to be successful, the more likely you're going to be contributing, and that you're going to actually be able to pay more taxes and contribute to the economic wherewithal, but not just economic, but social, cultural, all of the makeup of Canada. All right. Okay, and then I want to show you also, when it comes to these provincial and local programs, one we want to highlight, and these same things exist all across Canada. So we're just using kind of Calgary in this instance as an area to highlight. But one of them is, and I'm going to shift back to the website here, and let's see if I can find it here. Okay, this one you can see is called Fair Entry right here, which is a program and service for, it says, low-income Calgarians. And the reality, when you come to Canada, you don't even have a job yet. And so you want to stretch those settlement funds as far as you can. You don't want to just have them all eaten up. And so this program, you can register and you can get subsidies, which is basically a discount to a number of the more important critical things that you need. Everything from transit, so that you can use the public transit and get passes at a cheaper rate. Recreation fees, you definitely want to take advantage of those. If you have pets, just property tax assistance program. So there's a ton of different things that they can do for you to give you just a break, right, as you're getting started with your journey of settling in Canada. Okay. All right, so government programs, do not, whatever you do, ignore them because there's just tons and tons of resources that are available. Okay, next we're going to shift over here to accommodation. So like we talked about before, get a reference letter from your landlord. Book that Airbnb for the first 2 weeks. Explore different areas in your city, and then look at different areas where you want to live. And there are some resources that are available, like rentfaster.ca, and I'll shift back to my to the website, are just one example of locations where you can punch in where you want to live. So if we say Calgary, Alberta here, you can indicate your price range. We'll just leave that open. You can indicate how many beds, what kind of a studio, 1 bed, 2 beds, whatever it might be. So if I click 2 beds here and I want 1 bathroom is good enough, and I do a search for properties, then it's going to pull up and make your search just a little bit easier. And these resources that are available, like Rent Faster, they're available all across the country, and there are a number of different ones. This is just an example of what we give. So know that they exist, and this is a really, really good place to start, right? And then contact the landlord, like we said. Try to set up those appointments as soon as possible. So in that range, you can see it's got quite a wide breadth of locations all throughout the city of Calgary. And the same thing exists in your city that you're destined to. So keep that in mind and use it. All right. And Rent Faster is only one of them. So then check the rental laws in your province. And the amazing thing about the government resources is they point you to a lot of these different pieces of information that can help prepare you so that you're not being taken advantage of, so that you know what a landlord can do and can't do. Because I'll tell you, in many of those countries I've heard people coming from, landlords can be slave traders. Like, they can be awful. And understand that you, as a tenant or someone who is renting accommodation, have rights. And so you have to make sure that you're aware of them so that you're not bullied and that people aren't trying to take advantage of you. Okay. All right. Make a detailed inspection of your new home. This is critical. Once you've settled on it, sometimes we'll even encourage you to take your video camera and actually record as you're going through what we call the initial walkthrough, because going through that and recording to make sure that there's no damage to the property is absolutely critical. Because when you're getting ready to move out to a different place, they're going to go through and they're going to say, all right, is there any damage here that was caused by you while you were here that's not incidental, that would affect your damage deposit? And I don't think there's a place out there, that a long-term rental, that you're not going to have to provide an initial damage deposit, so a sum of money to basically protect the landlord in case you cause a bunch of damage and then leave. And so that damage deposit, if that landlord says, oh, all those marks on the road that you on the wall that you have up there, those were all because of you, and then you've got the video proof that says, nope, see that when we did the walkthrough, this is the proof from the room, there was no damage, that damage was already there, then you can protect yourself to make sure that you get your entire damage deposit back. So that's just a little tip. So go through, make sure you're looking for any scratches on the floor, stains, leaks, dents, holes, pins in the wall. Often little pin marks are not considered to be damage, but some landlords can be kind of jerks. So you need to make sure that you're protecting yourself. Also, cracks and things like mold, which that's going to be an important decision in even choosing to go there. All right. Renter's insurance. This is something that often people don't talk about, but it is something that's really important. And in many cases, some landlords require that you have renter's insurance. So don't try to save a lot on the insurance. It's better be safe than sorry. And when you're buying that insurance, make sure that you've got coverage from flood damage, from sometimes we have water backup in the pipes, like the sewer backs up. So make sure that you have coverage, especially if you're renting a basement suite. So in Canada, we have a lot of those that are below ground. Sometimes you rent those from homeowners, and you're the one that's going to get it if there's problems with the sewer backup. And that's the last thing you want to have to deal with on your own. So that's where the renter insurance can kind of come in. All right. Okay, let's shift to our next slide here. Finding jobs. And this is really the last one, and one of the ones that's probably the most important for people when they're trying to successfully settle in Canada. So understand that most jobs are actually unadvertised. So you might think, hey, look at all these job postings. That's great. But understand that's just it's just scratching the surface. And I see Mahesh here is asking a question. Mahesh, we are just about to the stage where we're going to have you ask some questions to our resident expert here, but hold off and we'll get to those as soon as we transition to the next slide. But yes, and you can ask about any of the other slides and everything that we've talked about to this stage. So most jobs are unadvertised. That means word of mouth. You need to get to know people. You need to realize that, sometimes jobs aren't even posted. And so yes, the ones that are advertised, you're going to pursue them, you're going to go after them. But the reality is the ones that are unadvertised are sometimes the best ones. So also recognize that the hiring process can take up to 6 months. That's why the government has asked you to have all of those settlement funds. It's one thing to just take a survival job and to just start bringing money in, but understand that in many cases, to find that job that you're looking for, it's a long-term process, and you need to be prepared for that and not be discouraged. So check the statistics in your province, get a feel for what the job market's like, because once again, that may also indicate or give you some idea as to whether or not you even want to go to that province. So although this is kind of, you're already here, you're already on the ground, this is why we told you to take a look at the market and opportunities for your particular skill set all over Canada to make sure you're finding the right place to settle. Once again, prepare your resume, and I'm emphasizing here before you depart because it's important that you have this taken care of and in place, and you use those pre-arrival services to put it together before you actually travel to Canada. Maybe you need to reach out to people that you references for your work that the Canadian employer who's considering you for a position can contact to get that reference. All right. And I see here that you guys are talking amongst yourselves. That's great. Help one another. That's why we created it. And I also want to remind everyone about that private group. Long after this webinar is done, the goal is to kickstart this group to make it a good, safe place where people can talk about the issues they're facing as they are actually settling in Canada. With our Express Entry Law private Facebook group, and I think many of you probably already are aware of this, people will ask all kinds of questions. And so what we're trying to do is create a separate place that's safe for people to share information, share knowledge about the actual landing process and getting settled in Canada, which can sometimes get lost, in the big mass of 124,000 people that are in the Express Entry Law private Facebook group. If you're not in that one, get over there if you're in the process of applying for Express Entry, because there's lots of people that are helping one another in there, and it's a good, safe place to do that. But for settling, when you're ready to come to Canada, the Settling in Canada hub that we're creating, that is the site. So go in there, post your questions, help one another. So big shout out to Callum here. I can see who's providing some information and answers to, I think, Mahesh. Okay. All right. Let's take a look at some other things to consider. Okay. Obviously, check the requirements for your profession. There's nothing stopping you from going through the process to see what it takes to become an engineer, a licensed engineer in Alberta long before you ever come. So hopefully you've done that research, but now is the time where you're really hitting the pavement, where you're actually contacting the association. You're saying, look, I want to get my credentials recognized. I want to practice as an engineer in Canada. What do I need to do? Or a lawyer, or even trades. What does it take to get my welding, my welding qualifications confirmed so that I can become a welder in Alberta or Ontario or wherever it might be? Okay, and then make that list of the necessary qualifications and then get proof of them, right? Okay, now another thing that I wanted to identify that many people kind of poo-poo and they say, oh, what's the point of that? It doesn't serve any purpose. Consider volunteering first. So there's no better way to get experience in Canada than to volunteer. Yes, you're not getting paid, but you're making connections. You're building relationships with people that are then actually going to go through the process of helping you. They're going to be your advocates. They're going to be your evangelists. When they know you're an awesome person, you've volunteered with them alongside, you've shown them your work ethic, then at that stage, they're going to be more apt to keep their eyes and ears open, as we say in Canada, for opportunities that could arise. So volunteering has tremendous just potential, and it's so effective in making connections, especially in whatever particular industry you want to work in that might be hard to get into. So consider volunteering, and in the government resources, there's a ton of other supporting, basically other resources that validate what I'm telling you on the importance of volunteering. Networking. That's how you find a job in Canada. It's by who you know. And so if I was to pull Igor in here and say, hey, Igor, how did you get your job in Canada? I can tell you that job was not advertised. And to a large extent, it was a prior relationship that he had with me, in fact, that resulted in him getting offered the position. And when you think about volunteering and networking, I had a chance to see kind of how he did his work, how he prepared the documentation that I needed him to collect for me. I saw he was meticulous. I saw that he was well organized, and he was just a darn good kid. So that made it pretty easy for me. But that's the same way you're going to find jobs in Canada as well. Friendship, networking. Then, of course, all of the ones out there, and there are so many. LinkedIn, yes, is a good place to start. The job bank, which all of you know, and then there's also local newcomer services that can help. Now I'm going to shift back here to the site, and I'm just to the website here. I'm going to flip over to one here. So Alberta and many of the provinces have their own, which is different than the job bank. They actually have places where you can search that are really focused by that province, and in many cases, each province, the employers will tend to look to their local provincial job boards and things for posting jobs, even more so than the federal job bank. Despite what the federal government, they herald the job bank as the place to go. Each province has their own similar job boards. So if we go here and we click on look for work, and then on the right, as we can look, there's a whole bunch of information on how to navigate the process. And so you can, I'm not going to dive into specifically pulling up jobs, but you can see there's Alberta job postings right at the top here on the right, wages and salaries in Alberta to get an idea of what people are paying, what the going rate is. And that's important too, because you may be offered a job by someone who's offering you minimum wage, when really the minimum wage is nowhere near. You should be paid double for a starting job, and they're just trying to take advantage of you. So it's important to have an idea of what the going rate is for a position, because sometimes they ask those questions, right? An employer says, well, what are your salary expectations? And in that regard, then you can rely on, knowing that, okay, I can actually ask for this because that's what the going rate is. All right. Okay. So take that into consideration. All right. And we'll jump back to our slide here. We're just about wrapping up this section. And so now what I want to do here is I want to shift gears, and now is the time for our Q&A session. So I've invited a special guest to join me here, and we're going to see if we can get him connected in here. We'll see how this works. All right. Okay. So look at who we have here. We've got Igor. How are you doing, Igor?
I'm fine. I'm really excited for this webinar.
Awesome.
I'm really excited to see a lot of people joining, and we have some conversation going. So that's really exciting. Thank you, everyone.
Absolutely. So why did I choose to bring Igor on? Because he's just finished going through the process. And obviously I'm here available. I've got this beautiful lake behind me. Igor is actually in his house in Calgary, and he is available to answer a ton of questions, whatever we were both available here to answer these questions that you have. So now is the open mic time. This is the opportunity for you to post your comments, post your questions, anything that you have about the settlement process. If we can answer them, we'll sure try to answer those. If we can direct you to a different location or somewhere else to get those answers. And maybe we'll just need to collect those questions that you have and actually go over and ask them and field them in the Settling in Canada private Facebook group. Now, as we wait for everybody to post their comments here, we'll let those kind of queue up, Igor. You can see here, Mohammed says, when do you or will you launch this group? Well, it's already launched, actually. It's already in existence. And I'm not sure if some of you maybe weren't aware of it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to pull it up here so that you guys can see where to go to access this private group, because you all should have had an opportunity to do that already. So let me just open up the feed here. Okay. And we'll open this up. And then I'll share my screen. Okay. And I'm just going to flip back here. I've got a bunch of things going on, but let's flip back here. So you can see here, Mohammed, this is called the Canadian Settlement course. We're actually going to change it because originally we thought, hey, we're going to create this course, until we realized, and even Igor realized, holy cow, there are so many resources out there that are already provided by the government that it doesn't make any sense to have a course. What makes sense is to create a hub. And so this is going to become the Canadian Settlement Hub, moving to Canada Made Easier, where you guys can all come in, you can post your questions, and you can collectively share insights, knowledge, tips, strategies. And so this is where you're going to go in and post your comments. You can see Callum's already in here. So that is awesome. And Callum, big shout out to you, my friend. He's already engaged and responding, and yeah, fantastic. So check this out, and this is just getting started. So the goal, and I intend to do future Q&As right inside this group that are focused on settlement for the members that are in here, and just to really make this the hub for people where they can go to get the information that they need and to know where to look. Because like I said already, we have just an absolute ton of resources that are being made available by the Canadian government through these various settlement organizations that are paid to be experts in teaching you how to integrate into Canada. So we don't want you to waste that, okay? All right, so I'm gonna shift back here to our amazing guest, and let's go back and see what we've got for comments. So anyone that's tuning in live, make sure you post your comments. Now's the time, and we'll stay on here as long as we need to answer those questions, and then after that we'll wrap things up. Okay.
Mark, before we start,
yeah,
I wanted to answer the question asked by Mahesh.
Yeah.
He was asking about the renting a place, like renting a room.
Great.
And
Okay.
finding roommates.
There it is. I just pulled it up here.
Mahesh, if you're trying to find a roommate, there are multiple options that you can opt for. First, you can check Facebook community, Facebook groups for the city that you plan to stay with. There might be a lot of students who are actually looking for roommates, and you want to check them out. Then if you go to Rent Faster website, there is actually an option that was suggested by Colin to select shared option for finding a place. And then the other suggestion that I would probably choose first, actually, is to go to Kijiji website. This is the market platform that you can buy stuff, you can rent stuff, and there is a section called real estate. When you click on real estate, you can also select for rent, and then there will be an option for room rentals. And so this is one of the options that you can also decide to go with. I know that in the larger cities, it's pretty problematic to get an apartment, especially because apartments are reserved and booked really fast. And so maybe you want to look for a roommate if you are not sure whether you will stay in the city for long term or not. So yes, Mark, if you go to Kijiji, it's and Mahesh, it's real estate for rent and then room rentals.
Okay.
And then I would also recommend to go to settlement organizations, because they have a lot of immigrants and a large community of newcomers who are also facing the same problems as you do. And it might be easier for you to find people than to find a place in the first place, you know.
All right, I'm going to shift over here to the website here, just so that he can see, and we'll close that out. Now I'm kind of monopolized here on the screen, but Igor is there. I'm going to unmute him. Okay, you're back, right, Igor?
Okay.
Okay, good. Now we can hear him. When I flip screens, it mutes my guest, so Igor is alive and well now. So you can see here, guys, what Igor was talking about. Click on real estate, and I'm the one controlling the mouse here, but what we've got, because we've got a bunch going on, it seems like the internet's a little bit slower. So we'll just have to accept that fact. I'm not going to be able to probably do it as quickly as possible, but you can see you hover over real estate, and then for rent, Igor, is that correct?
Yes.
And then room rentals and roommates. So I won't dive into that, but this is kind of one of the locations that Igor was talking about. All right. Okay. Yes. And then we'll just we'll jump back here to the man, the myth, the legend, Igor. Okay, great question. All right, let's see here now. Let's see what else we have. Yeah, and actually, we'll give Callum a shout out here. He says, just select the shared option when it gives you property type option. Absolutely, great suggestion. Okay, then Ralph says, or just go to a workplace and ask for a job. You know what? I should pull Ralph on, because in all honesty, jobs, you can obtain jobs through a wide variety of means. Some might be more, well, more your style, I guess you could say. Some people may feel more comfortable just going to a workplace and asking for a job. Sometimes people get lucky, and people, when they're looking for people and you've got your resume and you drop it off, that's a great way of kind of getting that initial introduction. And in fact, my kids, even when they're looking for jobs, that's what they do. My son was ready. He finished his lifeguard stuff and he was ready to get a job at our local YMCA. And and then Corona hit and everything kind of ground to a halt. But he did that by actually going in person and providing his resume, and then was going to get called back for an interview. Sometimes you can knock on 1,000 doors, of businesses and not get anything in return. But that's still a good point, Ralph, and that is something you can do once you're there. All right, and then Mahesh has given a shout out to Callum, and we're going to give a shout out to both of them. That's the kind of community we're looking for, right there with the big thumbs up. Okay, and then Mohammed, we've answered your question about when to launch the group. Okay, and this is a good point. Ralph says sometimes workplaces have you, provide your own tools, and sometimes that can cost you thousands of dollars. So depending upon the types of jobs you're filling, especially in the trades, sometimes you're required to have your own tools and you have to purchase things. And so you have to have resources set aside for that. So that's a really good tip. Okay, let's connect with Emeka here. And Emeka, if you want to go and check out Emeka, he's got a history with me for quite some time, don't you, my friend? And Emeka actually was, the thing for him is that he has been, he's been involved with me probably since the beginning of time, right, my friend? He's purchased the Express Entry do-it-yourself course a long time ago, provided me an awesome testimonial, and I think he was the last of my initial wave of testimonials to actually get the confirmation of permanent residence, and I think that's the case for you, Emeka. So big shout out to you, and once this lifts and once you can kind of travel, and I don't think, my friend, you have traveled yet, I can't remember, but he says, how do you get an Alberta health insurance during this COVID-19 pandemic? You can actually obtain Alberta health coverage, and I'm not sure if you're in Canada, you can obtain that coverage online now. So a lot of the social insurance numbers, Alberta Health, you can register and obtain that through an online application so that you don't actually have to go down in person. And in fact, many of the government agencies are actually closed to walk-up traffic. So that's a great question. Thanks for asking that one, Emeka. Okay.
And Emeka, I would recommend to go to the ahip.org website. When you even in Google, if you type Alberta Health Insurance Program COVID-19, it will give you the link to this website. There you can find how health insurance providers respond to coronavirus. And just one of the example is, for example, Aetna will waive copays for all diagnostic testing related to COVID-19. And so this is just one of the examples of how the province adjusts to COVID-19, and you want to go and check all the online resources, because obviously you don't want to go in person, because first, everything is pretty much closed, and then the other one, we want to stop the spread of the virus.
Yeah.
So yeah, online resources is the go for.
Awesome. Excellent. And obviously, when you do get your place, wherever you're renting, you need to make sure that you've got an internet connection, which I guess we probably should have put that on our list as well when you're getting set up, to make sure that you have access to Wi-Fi. All right, let's jump over here to another. Elias, it is so good to connect with you, my friend. Okay, so he says, hi, Mark and Igor. I missed the first 20 minutes, so disregard this if you've already talked about it. But I'd love to know more about K-12 education compared to Canadian K-12 compared to U.S. educational system. Okay, so maybe this is something, Igor, that I should jump into. It's interesting. A lot of what I'm going to say here is anecdotal. In other words, I've never had my kids attend school in the U.S. I've got lots of friends that have had kids that have attended in the U.S. And so when you're comparing them, you try to compare quality of education. You try, it's hard because, generally speaking, they follow the same kind of model with the importance of public education. But I like to think that our system up here is just a little bit better. that our teachers are paid a lot more than they are in the US. And because of that, the quality of education has higher caliber teachers. And I don't want to, that probably is coming off wrong. And I don't mean to disparage the education system in the US at all. There are wonderful schools, there are amazing teachers. But I do know that our Canadian kids who go down to school and universities in the US tend to do pretty good. And their English tends to be really well, they tend to excel in English and, the core stuff. So it's hard to really compare, but I know the Canadian public education system, K to 12, is well recognized all over the world as really, really being good. Now, with that being said, there are countries that are doing a much more phenomenal job than we are. But as a former high school teacher myself, I can tell you that the system is really, really good. And I know that when people come, they're pleasantly surprised to see what their children are able to access through the public education system, through just caring teachers, administration that really have the best interests of kids at heart. They're not designed as a profit center to make money. The education is funded through our taxpayer dollars, and the teachers are there to focus on being the best that they can be. So, there are private schools as well that are available that you can pay out of pocket. There are both public, and we have separate school divisions in Alberta. So there are Catholic school divisions in Alberta. There are other, like I said, private schools of all kind of denominations. So, and some people even choose to homeschool. And so you can get paid as a parent to homeschool your children in the same way that those that go to school. So there's lots of different options. So maybe that was a little bit more than was intended, but I like to think Canadian education system is pretty darn awesome for the K to 12. Great question. Okay. Okay, this one is I'll pull it up. We're really focused on kind of settlement questions, but this does kind of fit into it. So Chen, so it says, hey Mark, my name is Jennifer. I'd like to know if we are from the federal skilled worker, but after landing in anywhere other than Quebec, are we still able to move to and work in Quebec legally afterwards? Thanks. So as we talked about before, when you go through express entry, you have to show through the federal skilled worker program and the Canadian experience class. So it's really those programs. You have to be able to demonstrate that you intend to establish yourself in a province other than Quebec. And so you need to be able to demonstrate that. So when you come in, if you're landing at the airport in Montreal saying, hey, I'm just coming to Montreal, your express entry could completely blow up and they could refuse it. And so the key obviously is that you are intending to live outside of the province of Quebec. And after you've settled, after you've landed, you've gotten settled in a province, Canada, through the Charter of Rights and Freedoms, has the provision for freedom of mobility. You're not restricted. You can go live wherever you want in this fine country. But I'd be very, very cautious. I'd make sure that Quebec is not your intended destination and you're just kind of misrepresenting to the officer. Don't consider Quebec until you've considered another province first. After you've done that, if you've gone there and you've gotten your 2-week bed and breakfast, you've looked around, you've seen that that it's really going to be tough for you, and there's this amazing job offer in Quebec, well, the Charter of Rights and Freedoms grants you the ability to make that decision then to move to a different province. Okay, but don't operate from the assumption I'm just going to pretend like I'm living in Alberta and then I'm going to go somewhere else. Always make sure that you're following what the regulations require. You don't want it to come back and bite you. Okay, let's see. Okay, here's another one. So Agam says, how important is learning French, especially for the government jobs? That's actually a really, really good question. And I can tell you that for federal government jobs in Ottawa, it's super important. If you are bilingual, trust me, you're going to have a huge, massive leg up on anyone else that can't speak both English and French. So great question, Agam. That is right in line exactly with the kinds of questions I'm looking for. That's boy, if I could give you a big star. Actually, I wonder if I can, Igor. Here's what I've got for here's what I have for Agam. Yes, you get the big applause, my friend. Okay, here we go. And maybe I think this one is for Igor. So Steffi says there were multiple pre-arrival services. Do we need to register for all or just choose any one? So what do you figure, Igor?
Well, I would recommend to register for all because it doesn't hurt first. And then you never know which service will have the answer to your question and which will not. So Mark, if I can ask you to go back to your browser and to open up the first tab.
Okay, so we're here. Okay, I'm going to flip back here, Igor, to our, make sure I've got the right one. There we go. I'm a little bit slow and moving things around. Okay, and I'm going to, just one second here. I'm going to, okay, your audio is on. Okay, yeah, so guide me through it, Igor.
Okay, so here you see there are 4 steps: about the pre-arrival services, who can get the services, and then prepare to live in Canada. And if you click on prepare to live in Canada, you will be given a list of pre-arrival services that would really help you a lot. And personally, I chose one of those services, but actually, no, I've registered for a couple of them. Mm-hmm. But mostly I relied on Next Stop Canada, which is the 3rd one. And we actually can even show our viewers the services that they offer.
Yeah.
Can't we?
Yeah, we can. Like I said, the internet is just a little bit slow because we're pushing it out, but that's okay. They'll just have to look at my ugly mug a little bit longer here. Hey. All right. Okay.
All right. So this is the website that helped me a lot in my turn. So when we,
you keep talking and I'll log in.
When we log into our account, and you need to make sure that you register before you arrive to Canada. That's one of the requirements that they have. You will be given tons of resources, video resources. You will be given the access to webinars, and just check through all of those because you never know which information will be crucial for you. So right here we have housing, we have health, education, employment categories. And the best thing about the resources that are provided by the Government of Canada is that they are applicable not only to one province, but they are universal. So you can even choose which province you immigrate to. And when you register for this pre-arrival service, you will be also given the questionnaire that you will have to fill out. And based on this questionnaire, the organization will send you a personalized checklist of links and services that you can try to check when you arrive. So for example, in my case, I was selecting the answer that I was moving to Canada, to Alberta. And so they provided me with the information on how to get a Alberta health insurance, or they provided me the information on how to get an Alberta driving license. And I'm not sure. Oh, Mark, if you click on my plan, it's going to give this checklist.
Okay, let's do it.
Yes. Mm-hmm. So they basically assess your needs and provide you with a long list of links. And it's just going to load. Yes.
Yeah, and this is one of the things for Igor and I that really kind of blew our mind. I'll be honest, it was unbelievable when we started to really look. And obviously Igor knew about this, but even the other options that Igor didn't choose, each of them are, they have different strengths and different weaknesses, and there's nothing stopping you from registering, at least to our understanding, for any and all of them. But you can see here, life in Canada. Before you arrive in Canada, right? Specific videos, start your life in Canada. Community and government services, newcomer services. One thing I want to point out here, I'm actually going to just shift back we'll keep going through these and then I'll jump back. So working in Canada, finding a job, resumes, cover letter, interviews, Canadian workplace culture, which you guys need to understand that yes, there is a workplace culture. And so the way that you go about interacting with your coworkers, your employer in your country may be considerably different in Canada. And how you interact, if you're not familiar and educated on Canadian workplace culture, it may mean the difference between you getting a job and not.
Exactly.
So education in Canada, professional network. So this is where I actually wanted to jump down to. one of the services that you will find probably the most helpful if you're a professional is these mentorship programs. And I myself am actually a part of a mentoring program, and I'm actually mentoring a lawyer from Nigeria right now who lives down here in Lethbridge. And so she's going through a number of places, trying to figure out exactly what the future holds for her profession, what she wants to do with her foreign credentials. And so I have been paired with her, and there's organizations just like that all over Alberta and really across the country. And boy, the connections that she can get through me are tremendous, ones that she never would have herself. So those are just another example. All right. So you can see here food, housing, accommodation, and these are all geared to Igor specifically because of how he answered the initial questions. So health, mental health, well-being, financial, family support, legal information, community services. So you can see all of this is available. It's pretty cool. And then you can also, oh, sorry, Igor, did you have something you wanted to add?
I wanted to add something that you have to consider, that there's no service that's absolutely best in everything. And all of these services that provide help to newcomers, they actually compete between each other, because the amount of newcomers that they help to will determine how much funding they will get for the next year from the government. And so it's in their best interest to provide as many information, as much help they can, and try to compete between each other. So I really would recommend to register for all of them and check what each of them has to offer, and be active, just be proactive, I'd say, because you will face the reality that when you arrive to Canada, things do not get much easier as when you are abroad. You can start booking your appointments for interviews, for jobs, even before you arrive to Canada.
Yeah.
You can register for, let's say, CPR training, which might be required in your trade, even before you arrive to Canada. And so let's say you arrive on Monday, and then on Wednesday, you already have the training. On Thursday, you would already have the certificate. And on Friday, you're eligible to apply for a job, which is really amazing, because when you start checking out the requirements after you arrive, just imagine how much time did you lose. And each day costs you money, because you have to pay for temporary rent, you have to pay, let's say, even for permanent rent. It's money. And so you want to get your feet together as soon as possible.
Yeah, absolutely. And hit the pavement running, as we say. Okay,
Yes.
Chen actually brings up a question here that's a really good one. So for programs for low income, aren't we required to have at least 1 year of funds so that we don't put a burden on the government right after we are landed? Will that be an issue when we apply for citizenship? So this is a perfect example of a myth that's perpetuated out there. In Canada, this is one thing that's significantly different than the US. I pay a lot of taxes, and those taxes go to various social programs, including these ones that are designed to help integrate newcomers to Canada. There is there's a school of thought, which is heavily adopted in Canada, that the sooner we can get you, Chen, into the best paying, highest paying job that we can get you into, the sooner you're going to be paying more taxes, which will benefit everyone else and contribute. It doesn't serve any purpose for someone to struggle through this survival job because they can't afford they can't afford to volunteer to get into a better job, and then they're trapped. So there's a philosophy, and at a policy level, the government of Canada and the majority of Canadians believe that it's important to give newcomers every opportunity for success we can, including helping them to not use up all of their savings while they're trying to get their feet underneath them. And that by doing that, not only are they then going to have more resources to put into our own economy, but they're going to be able to be contributing at a high level for far more years than wasting 5 years to get on their feet. And then no, in no way, shape, or form is it going to affect citizenship. No. And understand, this isn't welfare. this isn't social assistance in the sense of I can't find a job, I'm not capable to support myself, so I need to rely on the government, the common term welfare. That's not it. These are additional supports that are available to newcomers to give them a leg up, to help them, to support them. And understand, even for me, like just recently, things are a little bit tighter right now. And so the government has some loan programs that are available for businesses that I'm in the process of applying for that provide interest-free loans, and then even having some of it forgiven if you pay it back within the time frame. And so those programs are available to everyone because of this coronavirus. And so even though we're doing okay, there's still a lot of uncertainty with what the future holds with even my business. So I'm going to definitely take advantage of that. The reality is I paid into it for 20 years. So, and so everybody works collectively. And that's the mentality versus, say, in the United States. And I don't want to overgeneralize, but generally speaking, in a more capitalistic market, there's opportunities, to make more money and to do those things. But also when times are tough, you're kind of screwed. So you are left to your own devices to sink or swim. And so that's where Canada tends to look after its own. And that's why I think Canada is so awesome. So great
And
question.
I wanted to add here that you have to understand that you're newcomer, you consider to be a newcomer, not only for the first 2 weeks after you arrive. You are a newcomer for the first couple of years. And that's because you still have to earn back the money that you brought here and spent for settling in Canada. And the government actually cares about you not only for the first couple of weeks, they care about you genuinely for long term. And I wanted to share a story of the immigrant family that I know. They arrived to Canada 2.5 years ago, 2 years ago, and they settled in New Brunswick. After living in New Brunswick for quite some time, they decided that they want to try luck in Alberta. And so they packed everything that they had, packed it in a car, and just hit the road. When they arrived to Alberta, they realized that in Alberta, the minimum wage is higher, but the prices are higher as well. And so they reached out to newcomer organization, like settlement organization, and requested the assessment of their income. And so they found that in Alberta, they are considered low-income family. And so they applied for this fair entry program from the city of Calgary. And so with this fair entry program, they received a discounted rate for gyms, for swimming pools, for recreation, for public transportation. And this really helps if you, let's say, move from another province, not to say if you move from the other country. And it's the help from the city, because you pay taxes not only to the federal government, your taxes go to the federal government, to the province, and to the city as well. And so you want to leverage every opportunity that the city gives you, that the province gives you. Just do not sit and not look for jobs and then say, oh, I need help because I cannot find a job. That's not how it's going to work. It's mostly that you require just some little assistance, some little help to get things started, for you.
Yeah. And I also want to point out that there's no stigma. And when I say stigma, there's no one looks down upon you or considers you somehow a less successful immigrant because you've accessed these programs. When I remember when I was young, we lived on a farm and my father had heart conditions, and after 3 open heart surgeries, he succumbed to it and he passed away. And so my mom and my 3 other brothers, we get control, Mark, get control. Okay, I'm good. Our income just was basically decimated. And so my mom had to go back to work, and there were a whole bunch of things. And if it weren't for government programs like this, we would never have been able to get on our feet. And my mother was influential in me going to not only law school, but becoming a teacher and then moving on to law school. And her support would never have been possible. We would never have made it if it wasn't for these types of programs. And so the goal is to give you every opportunity possible to be successful, because when you're successful, everybody benefits. That's the difference between other countries where you get ahead off of the backs of other people, where you feel like you can only get ahead because you have to push someone else down and take their spot. That's not Canada. We get together and we all succeed collaboratively, collectively. And that's the
Right.
mentality. Now, obviously, that's a utopian view, but that's basically kind of the reality. That's what we're shooting for. All right.
And I wanted also, before we jump to the next question, I'm
Yeah.
sorry.
Okay.
I wanted to share my experience. When we arrived to Canada, we were in a real shock. And there is such a thing called cultural shock. Even though we moved from the United States, like the difference between Canada and the United States was pretty shocking, because the most important thing in a country, in a community, are people. And people in Canada, they are really open-minded, they're really friendly, and they are the people who not really intend to take from others, but to give. And that's why we especially indicated in our presentation that you want to volunteer, because assistance from the city, assistance from the province would not be available without people volunteering. And so when you volunteer, you pay back what you receive from the city or from the province. So this is really important. And community in Canada is really built upon those principles and values of giving back. So I would really recommend you to give back as soon as you arrive, because honestly, you have a lot of things to be grateful for to this country. And this is just how I think this country became so great.
You're so right, Igor. I never even thought of it. Volunteering, I've got a full-time job, right? This is what I do. But the mentorship program that I'm involved with is a volunteer. My role is the vice chair in the national immigration section of the CBA. And if you listen to the past videos I've done, I've got an amazing group of table officers around me that are so much more capable than I am. But anyways, next year I'm going to be the national chair, and we're not paid anything. This is completely voluntary. And if I showed you my inbox of the things that we've been dealing with over the last stretch, and even for me, I have such a small piece of it. The other table officers have really been lifting heavy weights. I'd say probably a third of my emails every day come in are related to Canadian Bar Association matters, and it's completely voluntary. Why do I do it? Because I want to make the country a better place. And I think that's the mentality. So don't just think selfishly about it. It's kind of like almost an expectation. When your kids go to school, you volunteer with fundraisers, you volunteer with activities, you go on field trips with them. Volunteerism, that is entirely a Canadian thing. Obviously, I think other countries do it too, but that's something that we as Canadians are super proud of. And whether you're an official Canadian citizen yet or not, when you come here, you're one of us. All right. Okay, should we shift gears? That was pretty philosophical and and pretty deep, and crazy Mark was like tearing up. How about that in a professional webinar? Okay, let's get back to our good friend here, Callum. He says, I've read somewhere that CVs and resumes in Canada are supposed to be in a particular format. Is that correct? Or will requirements vary between employers? Okay, this is one of the schools of thought that has been out there. And it's a real myth if anyone says that they have to be in a particular format. That's not the case. Now, there are some strategies that over time, have, some employers do tend to look for things in a certain way. They like to see things a certain way, but there is no one magical formula. There really isn't. The most important thing is the little details, the things that really are almost ancillary to your actual qualifications. In a resume, does it look like it's neat and well organized? Are there typographical errors in it? Are there typos in it? Is there words misspelled? Like those kinds of things are more damaging than the actual structure of the resume. It doesn't need to be 500 pages. I can tell you as a business owner myself, looking through resumes, it needs to be short, concise, not 100 pages, because to a large extent employers are not going to look through a book of resources or references that is 7 pages long. they're going to skim, and they're going to skim fast because they've got 100 other resumes they're looking at. So make sure that you really highlight your strengths and make it easy for that employer to read what you've got. And the settlement organizations that are helping you to put your resumes together, if you follow their examples, you'll see that they probably vary a little bit from organization to organization, but all of them are probably just fine. There really is no, as long as you're following their templates, you're probably going to be pretty safe.
Yeah, and I also wanted to add here that when you apply for jobs, make sure that you include cover letters, because cover letters are important.
Yeah.
It might be not applicable to all the jobs. Let's say if you apply for a cashier position, you may not need the cover letter, but then again, it depends on the organization. But having a cover letter explains why you want to get this job. And you want to show that you don't only want to take money from the company in form of salary, you want to realize your potential and apply your skills to this job as well. And an employer has to see this. So if you just send a neat resume prepared through one of the websites that generate a resume, it might work for some, but then again, you want to boost your chances as much as you can. You will probably find that you spend way too much time on drafting the cover letters. But from the other point, think of how much time you would lose if you would not get this job and keep trying to send resumes without the cover letters. So it might be a good idea.
And one thing that is super important with those cover letters, it's easy to get into the habit of, I'm applying for 100 jobs, so I'm going to have a standard template that's really general, and I'm just going to submit it all out, and it all talks about me. And like Igor identified, it's important that you tailor those cover letters to the employer you're applying for, such that you can reveal in that cover letter that you personally have done your research on that company, on that business, and that you've tied in your skill set specifically to what they do. There's nothing worse than receiving a cover letter. And I understand, I even when I started practicing law at one of the national firms, I would then vet and review resumes of other law students who were applying to work in those large national law firms. And even having my own business, I've been to career fairs, I've done lots of different things. And there's nothing worse than seeing a cover letter that references the person's skill sets for a particular thing that your business doesn't even do, right? So for example, in the context of law, they say, I've got they're applying to Holthe immigration law, and they say, yeah, I've got a real strong interest in criminal law and family law, and I know I'll be really successful in your firm. Obviously, we just do immigration. So I can tell you, if someone had sent that, that would be a deal killer for me. I would look at it and say, well, they didn't even care enough to look into the business to know what we do. And so that's probably the hot tip of the day. And so, Callum, I'm just going to give you one of these two here. because that question is great. It led to a phenomenal amount of discussion. So good stuff. It's interesting, Igor. Technically, I have something at 10 o'clock here in about half an hour. So we'll see how many questions we can get through, because these are awesome. And guys, if your questions are not answered here, obviously this will be a recording, and we'll try to get in and give any tips and responses directly in the comment sections if we can figure out where these are. It's interesting, through this new feed that we have, Igor, I can't, we know it's all in YouTube, and so we'll try to get in there, and hopefully the comments will be there, and we'll try to respond if we're not able to get to them today, because we will run out of time, and I have to get to this 10 o'clock thing, and Igor knows what I need to get to. I've been operating on about 3 hours or 4 hours sleep every night. I went to bed tonight at I guess it was this morning at about 4:30 a.m. And so I'm operating on about 3 hours sleep, but largely because of this thing I have at 10 o'clock, which has got me so excited. Okay, let's see what we've got here. So Ibrahim says, I'm coming on a work permit to start with. Yep, that's a lot of people do that, Ibrahim. I was advised to apply for a study permit for my children, 5 and 2 years old. Application is asking for a letter of acceptance from institution. Okay, although this doesn't apply to settlement, technically you are kind of coming to Canada. The reality is, yes, they do ask for it. And so you need to reach out to schools and the public or wherever your plan is to go to school and try to get one of these letters. It sounds kind of goofy and absurd, but yep, you do. You need to get one of those. Okay, let's go to Norel here. If we do a soft landing but can't stay in Canada for too long, in other words, have to leave before the PR card arrives, where can we send the card? Are we able to have it sent internationally? Okay, so the card typically needs to be sent in Canada. And you know what, Igor and I have been talking about this, and to some extent, this may even be a service that we start to offer people. Because if you do need to do a soft landing, yeah, they're only going to send that PR card to an address in Canada, which is your address. And many of you may not have one yet. You're not going to put your Airbnb address down. And so sometimes that's kind of tricky when you're landing. And then it's interesting too, because sometimes if you're putting in a new address and you have different family members, there have been some issues with the border updating only the principal applicant's address, and then the government ends up sending cards to old addresses or your old consultant or immigration lawyer, and they get sent all over. So it's something Igor and I have been contemplating, and Susan within our office, as to whether we might consider offering that kind of a service as an address for people. But yeah, usually Canada is the direction.
And here it's important to know that, for example, when I was trying to move to Canada, I was really interested in how they will send the permanent resident card to me.
Yeah.
Like, luckily I had Mark, and they sent my cards to Mark Holthe. Mm-hmm. But let's say my friend, he moved to Vancouver just the day before I did. He had to stay in his Airbnb until his card arrived. Mm-hmm. And so in his situation, that was about 2 weeks, but I received my card only 6 weeks later.
Yeah. Yeah.
Imagine how much money that would cost you.
Yeah.
And the other thing is that you cannot specify PO box. You cannot use postal office as the address, because they send cards only to physical locations. So that's why it's important to look ahead in advance before you arrive to Canada, to have a plan what address you will give to the immigration.
Great question. Okay, let's jump over here to Haral. And Haral's kind of shifting gears a little bit on me. He says, are you going to arrange a webinar for investment in Canada? Which category of visa getting for this and other information? So when it comes to business immigration, I actually completed a very lengthy, multi-part interview with an amazing immigration lawyer, Jeffrey Lowe, who works in Vancouver. And I'm just going to share the website here. And so I want you guys to go to I want you to go here to my Canadian Immigration Podcast and stay tuned. I just released an awesome episode with immigration lawyer Will Tao, a good friend, also from Vancouver, on international students in Canada. But I'll just drop yours off here, all. But this site here, you will watch here in the coming days. I'm going to be releasing a series that's probably going to end up breaking into 3 episodes, just because Jeffrey talked about so many things, and it really revolves all around this notion of immigrating to Canada as an investor, entrepreneur, and what options are available, the programs that Jeffrey feels are the best, and some very practical tips on actually buying and investing in a business in Canada and how to choose it. So although that's not directly in line, just be advised of that, Haral. Okay. All right, and I guess I better shift back here to our portion. Mahesh says, thank you very much for your input, Igor, Mark, and Callum. You guys are an amazing team. Yeah, Callum is an amazing team with us, isn't he? That's what's so awesome about this, because really we become just like a family. And although the Express Entry Law Group is just, I never dreamed it would grow that big. And ironically, it probably would be 200,000 if Facebook didn't, just keep dropping people off the back end. They just refuse to let it get to 125. I don't know what the issue is. But anyways, that group has become quite large. But that's why we wanted to carve out this group here for settling in Canada. And I'm just going to flip back once again to the website. That's why we decided to create this. So go here, connect, and and just use this opportunity to actually ask your questions, share your collective knowledge, and this is what we want to have is the new source of information for people who are trying to get the answers that are just not available anywhere else. Rarely do people talk about this stuff, not like the process of getting PR. Everybody and their dog has got an advice and opinion on it. But this stuff is often less discussed and you have to search a little bit harder for it. So that's what we're trying to create here. All right, good job. Okay, so we'll go back here. And then just to wrap up, he says, cheers, God bless, stay home and stay safe. Thanks so much, Mahesh. Appreciate it. Okay, this is a great question again. He says, I've heard that the companies prefer students who have done their education from Canada and having their work visas over the direct PR students. Is it true? Yeah, it is. Yeah, I'll be 100% honest with you. And the reason is because right now, even though organizations like WES do a good job of equating educational credentials, not all Canadian employers understand, the extent to which your foreign education equates to Canadian education, even if you have a piece of paper. And so it is true. And the reason is because employers know that these students have obtained their education in Canada. They know exactly what they're getting. And if they got through, they know their grades, how those reflect and compare to other Canadians. And so, yeah, they do have a leg up. And that's just, there's no way of getting around it. It doesn't mean that you, as a highly educated, talented foreign professional, are not going to be able to get an awesome job in Canada. Canada, yes, the students may have a little bit of a shot as a new entry grad for those positions. They may have a little bit more of a leg up for those entry level, but you highly experienced people that bring years of experience often is very, very easily translatable to Canadian employers. And I don't want to be discouraging because they do understand and do accept. Think of IT, where really Canada is not the hotbed of education for IT professionals. It's India, it's all over the world but here. So in those occupations, oh yeah, like it's easy. I shouldn't say easy, but it just depends on the kinds of jobs that you're applying for. All right. Let's see here. Okay, and then Ibrahim is going on to ask, how do we get a letter if we're not in Canada? You have to contact the schools. And I also understand right now, with schools closed, the only thing that you're going to be able to do in your application is say, look, how do I contact one? All the schools are closed. And the reality is, as you're applying for these, nothing is going to happen, my friend, until the travel restrictions are lifted. So, although you can submit applications, nothing is going to happen until they lift these travel restrictions. And also, I want to point out that, you do have also the option of submitting that application and providing evidence that the schools are closed and saying, look, I'm happy to provide a letter, when when the issues are resolved and I can actually get them. But at this time, this is why I can't provide this, and then provide that detailed explanation and then submit the application. Okay. All right. Here's a good one from Mohammed. He says, what's the minimum amount of money do you advise a single guy to bring with you? What do you think, Igor? That's kind of a loaded question.
It's really personal. It is really personal and a good question, actually. So let's try
and maybe I'll jump in. Maybe he's talking about how much cash, should you bring with you, as opposed to, obviously we know you need to have available all of those settlement funds that you've put into your application. But I think Mohammed's probably asking, how much cash do I really need to bring with me?
Yeah, so you need to consider several options. First, will you have a car or you won't? The other one is what city you settle in and what province, because prices for rentals will depend really greatly on the province. So let's say let's just look at my experience. So we moved to Calgary. We had 16,000 Canadians minimum, approximately, that we had to have. Since I did not have a proof of employment, I had to pay a 3 months for my apartment in advance, upfront.
That's crazy. Are you serious, Igor? They made you pay a 3-month damage deposit?
No, not the damage deposit. Damage deposit was $500.
Okay, but they made you pay for 3 months rent?
Yes,
Well, that's
upfront.
worse actually. That's worse. Often the damage
But you
deposit, like
see,
you said, isn't the full month's rent, but 3 months in advance. Wow, that is crazy. I didn't even realize that.
I don't have to worry about paying my rent until, let's say, end of June, right? The thing is that when you sign a lease agreement with my building, they give you a promotion of 1 month free of rent. So I had to pay, let's just assume $4,500 for my rent upfront. Then I had to pay my insurance, which was around $100. Then I had to pay my phone carrier fees, another $100. And so sum of money gets piled up really quick. And then you have to consider that when you move into a new apartment, 95% chance this apartment will be not furnished. And you have to buy new furniture. And new furniture can be expensive, especially like mattresses. Like the mattress can cost you from, let's say, $200 to $1,000, depending on the supply. You never know whether your city has like a lot of choice, from mattresses.
And Igor is the prince of the Ukraine, so even a little pee under his mattress, he can feel it. So he needed an extra soft mattress that was just really,
No,
really
I didn't.
expensive.
I
I'm just
didn't.
joking. I'm just joking.
But you have to consider that you will have to spend, let's say, $2,000 just on getting your bed, chairs, table, let's say like a cabinet, and kitchen are mostly furnished. Like they have the furniture, they have the sink, they have the stove, so you don't have to worry about it. But you will have to have everything else to get yourself comfortable. And this can pile up to $10,000 in expenses just within the couple of weeks. You will be astonished like how fast your money evaporates. So I would recommend to bring as much as you can. There is no minimum, like because minimum depends on person, but what you want to get is the maximum of what you can actually bring to Canada.
Yes. All right. Thank you. Good job, Mohammed. Great question. Okay, Nathan says, "Hey Mark, will you be sharing your presentation deck or will this webinar be available to watch again later? Although I've made notes, it would be nice to review this at a later time." What do you think, Igor? Should we make
I
this
think
available?
definitely, sure.
Absolutely, Nathan. Absolutely, we will. For sure, we'll put it into right in here into the website, the Canadian Settlement, which will be Hub. We're going to change it from course to Hub, and so we will stick it in there. But also it will be available probably on the YouTube channel as well. Hey, Igor, and we're going to promote
Yes.
it everywhere. And when you take the time to build something like this, we want to get the most out of it that we possibly can to get it into the hands of as many people as possible. Just because this is kind of our way at Holthe Immigration Law of trying to give back. And, especially during these times that are so uncertain. So, and we've had a little bit of time on our hands. And so we thought, hey, this would be really cool. So this is part of the process. So we'd encourage you, Nathan, once you see it, and everybody else who's tuned in here live today, to share it with all their friends, let people know, post it on all the other Facebook groups, and just let them know that this is available and invite them to join the Canadian Settlement Hub. All right, great question. Okay, let's see. So now we're getting, this is how far behind we are here. So Elias says, this is once again, you guys are awesome. He says, I was reading that for government jobs, you have to prove your skills in French. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, they want to know. It's not just a mere attestation. And Agam says, you bet. Thanks. You guys are awesome. Okay, so we're going to just go to ones. Okay, Agam says, thank you, Mark. Yeah. Tamara Kobo says, Kijiji. Yeah, that is it. Okay, and then Ralph says, and in Canada, you have to make tax returns. Absolutely. This is something probably that's worth bringing up too. You may look at the offer for your job. You may say, okay, you're going to get paid $40,000 annual salary Canadian, and you start to do the math and you start to divide up. Okay, what is 40,000 per month? Okay, and start to use that for budgeting purposes. You have to remember that Canada, as more of a socialist country, we're not a totally socialist country, but we believe in paying more tax so that we have awesome health care, so that we collectively enjoy from better education, for our kids, so that we have better roads, better infrastructure, better programs like the amazing, pre-settlement programs that the government of Canada offers. All of that comes from taxpayer money. And so understand, like Ralph has identified here, that you have to pay those taxes and file your annual tax returns like in most other countries. So good point, Ralph. Thanks for bringing that up. Looks like we got about 5 more minutes here, Igor, and then we're going to have to shut down. Here's a good one from Dial. And obviously, everybody who's working in a profession needs to reach out to the association that you want to work in to understand what the rules are. So Dial says, I'm a teacher in India and I want to continue my teaching profession in Canada. What all licenses and exams do I need to pass to have it? Does CELTA valid and accepted there? So the international, teaching credentials traditionally don't mean a whole lot to the Canadian education system, but education is really governed on a province by province basis. And because of that, you'll need to determine where you're going to go, and by using the pre-settlement services that are available and filling out in the same way Igor did, it will populate certain things for you. But go to the education, the education association for each, or the teaching association for each province, or the province that you're going to go to, and that's where you'll get that information, Dial. And that's the same whether you're an engineer, whether you're any other profession. Like I said, even a welder or a pipe fitter, you're going to go to the association and do it now before you come to Canada to figure out what may be the requirements. Okay, we're getting into the weeds a little bit here, Nathan, but let's see what we got. Maybe Igor, you can step in too. Hi, Mark. I had another question. I plan to move to Ottawa, but I plan to quarantine at an Airbnb in Laval, Quebec, since I have cousins there and can get help if I need. Will this affect my entry to Canada? Yeah, dude, you need to be really careful because obviously, if your destination is Quebec, it could cause you problems. And so be very, very careful with that. You have to demonstrate an intention to reside in a province other than Quebec. And if you are showing that you're quarantining, you're going to have to really, really put some significant evidence in to show, look, this is just purely temporary because of COVID, and I need to have my family nearby, but my intention is to live in Ottawa. Well, if they say, okay, yeah, your family's in Quebec, but you're actually going to Ottawa, really? I think, Nathan, you have to be really careful with that. And I know it's not the advice that you want, but officers have the ability to do whatever they want. And they could easily say, oh, no, we don't believe you're actually intending to go to Ottawa. You're actually going to stay in Quebec. And it could cause large problems with your express entry. So now remember, I always say this in all the videos that I do, I deal with possibilities, not probabilities. So what's the likelihood that you have a problem? Maybe the likelihood that you have a problem with a border officer in your situation is maybe only 10%, right? Maybe 90% of people would not have an issue. Well, I'm never going to advise anyone based on probabilities. If there's even a possibility an officer could destroy your whole express entry process because you are destined to Quebec initially, then I advise my clients to avoid it. All right. All right. Steffi says, thank you, Mark and Igor. You bet. Okay. All right. Hi, Mark and Igor. What is the good timing to register to pre-arrival services? Is it valuable to register prior to COPR?
Yes, it is. As soon as you receive a passport request letter, go to the second page and follow the link provided in the second page. Use your application number or UCI number and register as soon as possible, because the more time you have to prepare yourself to move to Canada, the better.
Yeah, excellent. We'll zip through Dial's question here. Nope, low IELTS score. I can't tell you any programs that were actually going to allow you to come through. The whole express entry process is really focused on high English right now. Syshen says, hello, Mark. Are there any good early childhood post-grad programs in Canada? You know what? That's something also that you might be able to ask that question within our Canadian Settlement Hub. But I don't really know, and I'm pretty sure, Igor, we don't know, all the different education programs, but you just have to do your research. All right. Chen says, thanks so much. Very useful information. Awesome. That's exactly what we're looking for here. All right. And then we've got a few questions about landing here, which really is kind of a more specific. I'll try to answer the questions about, directly related to the coronavirus. Excuse me. We'll go on and answer those comments. Let's see here. Thank you, Mark. It seems you found in Igor a colleague who also values a humanized approach. Yes, I absolutely did. See you again on Tuesday. I'll have a question about GCMS notes. Be safe and healthy. You bet. I look forward to connecting with you, Elias. All right, Hiral says, thank you so much. Arunima says, I've been trying to look for jobs, but employers seem to be apprehensive. I received my OIMP and ITA. Yeah, so understand, Arunima, that initially you're not going to get a lot of responses back from the employers. But the key is in your searching to start to accumulate an understanding of what the job market is for your occupation in that province. You may not get a lot of responses, but and that is a phenomenal avatar. Isn't that awesome? But the reality is, you're just going to have to recognize that you will do a lot of the heavy lifting once you get into Canada. But if you do searches and you can't find any employers looking for someone with your qualifications, then I would avoid or consider moving somewhere else in Canada. Okay, Gam says, Igor, how difficult was it for you to find a job? Moreover, how helpful are the job fairs? Okay.
Well, maybe Mark can answer the first part.
Well, I can tell you, I handpicked Igor because he was a client. And he, I could see right away that he had good attention to detail. He was smart. And that, like you guys have identified it, he actually has just this awesome personality that really fit well with our firm. And you'll find that as well. Jobs are offered and jobs are extended based on a fit. And if you don't have a prior relationship with them, it's hard for them to determine whether or not you would be a good fit, even if you had all the qualifications that are required. All right. Okay. Looks like we are just about done here. We'll just give a little shout out here to Igor for being exceptional as always. And thanks for joining, Igor. It was great having you here in the Canadian Settlement webinar, and hopefully this will get a lot of traction. We're hoping that lots of people will watch it. It's a free resource that's being provided by Holthe Immigration Law, and we wish all of you all the best as you're transitioning through what is a very, very fun, exciting, but yet at the same time it's there's a lot of uncertainty about it. So if we can help to relieve some of the questions and provide resources and tools for you to navigate your way through, that would be awesome. All right, guys. So this is Mark Holthe, Canadian immigration lawyer, with my guest Igor here, who joined me, and also thanks to Bella for her awesome, her video that she created, which was amazing, and a big shout out to Ralph too, because he helped with some of our intros there. So big shout out to him. So we're just all one happy, happy community. All right, guys, take care, and we'll talk to you again soon.